So we had a big media day yesterday for the rematch between Carl Froch and George Groves. And they had a couple of face-offs, a main press conference, another face-off at Wembley Stadium on the pitch. But the most interesting thing to me was the behavior of Carl Froch's brother, who was present at these media events. And Carl Froch's brother is called Lee Froch. And he was basically involved in some pretty heated exchanges with George Groves. And interestingly, Carl Froch was totally passive during these exchanges. You know, he was literally taking a back seat. He wasn't engaging George Groves. But Lee Froch was getting involved in all kinds of stuff with George Groves. I mean, there was a confrontation. And at the Wembley press, the press event at Wembley on the pitch, it almost sounded like it was going to turn into some type of physical altercation between George Groves and Lee Froch, because at one point Carl Froch put his hand on George Groves, and George Groves said, "Look, if you put your hand on me right again, then it's going to be trouble here." And Lee Froch, piped up and started getting aggressive and all this kind of stuff, as if he was going to go for George Groves. Pretty ridiculous, Lee Froch, even though he seemed like a big guy, pretty ridiculous him attempting to go for George Groves. George Groves would no doubt knock him out in about 5 seconds flat. He's a professional boxer at the end of the day, and Lee Froch is just the average Joe. But anyway, that's a side note. From what I can see, Lee Froch has been brought in deliberately to try and get under George Groves' skin, because apparently Lee Froch has been going at George Groves on Twitter, and it all came to a head yesterday at the press events. So I think this is a strategic mind game by the Froch camp to bring Lee Froch in to try and unsettle George Groves. I think this is strategic. I don't just think it's a random incident with, Carl Froch's brother being there. And I mean, Carl Froch's brothers always attend his fights, but I don't think that the way Lee Froch has been going at George Groves, I don't think that's just a random organic situation. I think that's a deliberate attempt to try and unsettle George Groves. And it's very similar to what Angel Garcia does with Danny Garcia's opponents. He tries to get into altercations and whatnot with Danny's opponents to, number one, unsettle the opponent, get them off their game plan, and number two, to take the pressure and the spotlight off Danny so he can just concentrate on the fighting. Okay, and that's what I think is going on here. And you saw Angel Garcia do it very successfully, especially with Amir Khan. Amir Khan took the bait. He didn't stay calm and composed. He took the bait that Angel Garcia laid out for him, and Angel Garcia reeled him in hook, line, and sinker. So I think that's what the Froch camp is attempting with this Lee Froch situation. And from what I've seen so far, and again, I'll leave links to both of these press events that I'm talking about in the description below. But from what I've seen so far, George Groves is taking the bait. And this is very interesting because in the lead up to the first fight, it was Carl Froch who took the bait. It was George Groves who had the upper hand psychologically with the mind games. Carl Froch has even admitted that, because there are some idiotic Froch fans out there who basically don't want to hear any type of criticism about Carl Froch. The truth is about Carl Froch is that he did underestimate George Groves in the first fight. Okay, that's a mistake on his part. He did let George Groves' mind games get to him. He's even admitted that now in interviews that he's done at these press events. So any speculation about that can be laid to rest. He did let George Groves get under his skin. He did lose the battle of the mind games. He's admitted it. Okay, but this time around, from what I've seen so far, it seems as though, even though this is the first press day that they had yesterday, so far I think George Groves is the one who seemed a bit rattled by the mind games. He was facing off with Carl Froch's brother, and then he nearly got into an altercation on the Wembley pitch and stuff like that. And Groves just seems very hot-headed. He doesn't seem like he's keeping his cool the way he did before the first fight. And it's going to be very important for George Groves if he really wants to win this fight to keep his cool. We're almost seeing a role reversal right now. So yeah, very interesting that they brought Lee Froch in. He's doing his best Angel Garcia impersonation. Go watch the videos for yourselves and let me know how, what you made of it. Maybe you've got a different interpretation, but that's certainly the way I'm seeing it right now. And I anticipate that we're going to see more from Lee Froch in the build up to this fight at the different press events, unless he gets banned from the press events by Eddie Hearn. Maybe he thinks it's a bit too volatile. I don't know. But I mean, they did have what looked like security on hand. So, you know, maybe Eddie Hearn will let it run a little bit. But my interpretation of it is that this is a strategic move by the Froch camp. And Froch, to me, looked pretty cool. Even when he put his hand on George Groves, to me, that was like, he could tell George Groves was pissed off by Lee Froch. And he wanted to push Groves over the edge, so he even put his hand on him. You know, and I think it's mind games, and I think it's working at the moment. And George Groves needs to be mindful of this, man. Be careful, right? They're trying to play mind games with you right now, and it seems like George is taking the bait. Anyway, let me stop waffling. Drop your comments below. Let me know how you feel about the situation after you've watched those two videos, yeah? This is Hatman, I'm out.